The transfer window is open and Manchester United have made their first signing of the summer officially, or pending visa, pending all of the stuff that needs to be done in order to get a player officially on the Manchester United team. Matheus Cunha has been announced. His transfer from Wolves has been announced from Wolves to Manchester United, and it is a good start. United have been picking off, going back to old habits, picking off some of the best players from the Premier League. There's no doubt, no question that Matheus Cunha is one of those playing at a club who he was perhaps getting a little bit too big for. He was ready for that step up next. I see some people are out there saying that this player would be great for their team, and then he joins Man United, and then he's got an attitude problem, all of this kind of thing. The usual magic of flip-flopping over the course of a transfer window. And we're just getting started. How excited is everybody? I can't wait. There's 10 days of it to start with, before I think 6 days off for the Club World Cup, and then a full summer ahead for Manchester United to do a hell of a lot of business. They really, 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 really need to, on both outgoings, and incomings as well. They seriously need to renovate this squad, seriously need to look at making sure that they make Ruben Amorim's football team fitter, stronger, more mobile, better in 1v1s, better mentality. All of this has to be done. Maybe not all of it is achievable in one summer, but United definitely need to get onto much stronger a path. And Ruben Amorim certainly needs to have a good season next year, and certainly a good start to next season after an absolute nightmare of 7 months or however long it was in charge of United so far. But he has not had his team. He's not had his group of players yet. And I think that's what I've been holding off on. I've been holding off on judging him because, simply put, I just don't think this Man United team are physically capable of hanging in the Premier League. And he said this a number of times. They've been outplayed, outmuscled, outfought, outrun too often. And it's a good start. Matheus Cunha has joined, and I'll be talking a little bit about him on this podcast today. Not too much, because we've done plenty of talk on Matheus Cunha already, and I don't really want to tread over old ground, even though he has joined. I think there's an episode I did on him a good few weeks ago, talking about him as potentially United's perfect fit for the left 10. And I think that's exactly where he'll play. He's able to carry the ball. He's able to, he's got that little bit of maverick about him as well. And I've seen there's been a conversation over the last few days of having the personality to play for Manchester United and relish in the challenge of lofting Manchester United from 15th in the Premier League back to where they should be. That's certainly a characteristic that these players will need as well, or a few of them at least. And I think all around this is a positive signing, and it's a positive thing that United have got this sorted on day one of the transfer window as well. But it's apparently it's too slow for some people. So I'm just going to say, and what this podcast is, I'm going to run through some targets that have been linked with Manchester United over the past couple of days. I've written down 6. These are the ones that are just like, throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. But there will be so many players linked with Manchester United over the course of the summer. You really, really need to make sure that you don't get sucked in to the narrative and the story in every single one, because they will circle around. They will circle around media, because that's how it works in transfer windows. And it doesn't mean that there's potentially substance to all of them, even though I think one time United did have 904 right backs on their books or in their scouting system, and Aaron Wan-Bissaka came out on top. Was it 904? I think it was. Can't remember. But yeah, how they came out came out with Aaron Wan-Bissaka being the top of those players, I'll never know. But let's hope United are in better days, or are showing that they've moved forward and they've pivoted direction, and they're making better signings over the course of this summer than they have done in previous summers. They seriously need to start making some statements. Anyway, I've done 4.5 minutes of rambling there, but I'm going to tell you, please subscribe to the podcast if you've not done so already. The Promised Land, a Manchester United podcast on Apple, Spotify, and on YouTube as well. Please subscribe on those platforms. Let me know what you think in the comment sections. Give a 5-star review on the audio platforms. And just something as well. So for those of you listening on YouTube, now you're watching this on one channel if you're watching this, or if you're listening to this and you like to watch on YouTube sometimes, then maybe this is for you as well. But If you prefer audio, then maybe discard this. But I would appreciate, if you can, to take a look in the video description and look at a link to another channel. It's a Second Promised Land podcast channel, because I think, I've tried so hard. I would like to live stream more, right? And I think this is something that is, I've got decent experience at doing it, but I think basically how this channel came about previously, it was set up under an email address, which I no longer have access to, and I can't change the ownership of it on YouTube. So I'm looking at it and I'm thinking the only way around this really is to open a new channel, because I can't use any streaming clients with the current channel that I'm on. So that's the honest truth there. And I've tried to think of ways around it, but I think this is the only way. So I thought I'll see if anybody move across. So just check the description, wherever you're listening, Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, and check out the link to this other channel and give that a subscribe if you would like to do so, because I think the more people that move over there, the quicker I can probably start doing live streams on that channel. It's a shame, but yeah, that's just the way that it is. It's unfortunate, but YouTube doesn't make it too easy. And you kind of do need full ownership of things yourself, and I think this is the best way for me to do it. So would really appreciate that, and drop a comment as well on the YouTube channel, the current one, and maybe get across there as well, and keep an eye out for anything that pops up on there. If you would like to subscribe on there, I would really, really, really appreciate it. Right, day one. Well, we're on day 2 of the transfer window at the moment, and obviously I've done shows on Bruno Fernandes over the last few days. We're probably due at any point this week some kind of decision and some kind of confirmation on whether Bruno Fernandes will be staying at Manchester United or whether he will be leaving. I know that has dominated the conversation over the last few days, and it will continue to dominate the conversation even after the decision is made, because this is a very, very divisive one. If you haven't checked out the last podcast I did on Bruno, and you're unsure, you're on the fence, or you particularly want him to stay, or you particularly agree with him going, I've set my stall out on this, and it's not from a perspective of I don't undervalue what Bruno Fernandes has done. I think he has, just to go on record again, he has been the best player that Manchester United have signed in terms of his output, in terms of his delivery, in terms of his attitude. He's the best player United have signed in 12 years for me. Probably longer. I'm even thinking back to the final years of Sir Alex, maybe since Robin van Persie. He's probably the best player that United have signed since Robin van Persie, for the impact that he's had, the positive impact that he's had on the team. But, this is something we wait for. He's now on international duty with Portugal, and we wait and see what decision is made. I think this deadline seems to be moving backwards and backwards. He's got until Friday now to make a choice on whether he's going to join Al Hilal or not. We know the details of the deal. Well, I will say this: if he does decide that this is the move he wants to take, one of the biggest things that Manchester United will have to do in this summer is go to that negotiating table with Al Hilal, who various journalists, Fabrizio Romano has said this as well. He has said Al Hilal are willing to do whatever it takes in order to sign Bruno Fernandes in terms of financial packages. It's all about whether Bruno wants to move at the moment. But if they are willing to do whatever it takes and Bruno says yes to the move and they have a deadline, Manchester United should really be standing there and saying, this is our best player by a mile. He is our captain. He is our talisman. It will take a lot for us to let him go. And I've seen numbers from 80 million to 100 million. I said when this first came up, I said maybe United should be looking at 120, 150 million here. Whether that's realistic, I don't know. But United should definitely be trying to dig their heels in. Can they even build a relationship here and ask them to take more of this deadwood group of players that United currently have? Because that's where the money is. Look, United have to be really smart and really clever about how they go about this, because losing Bruno Fernandes is going to be a massive, massive blow if it happens. But United have to show, for me, they really have to show this summer that they have moved with the times, that they have got better at negotiating sales and buys. And look, the jury's out, innit? We wait and see. But they have a hell of a lot of work to do, given the amount of players that need to leave, the wages that they're on, and a bunch of things. So it is super important that if that day comes, and I will be here when the news drops, I will be reacting to whatever whatever decision Bruno Fernandes has made, look, it's gonna be a hell of a decision no matter what. So, look, I know there's plenty of you out there that don't want to sell Bruno Fernandes, and I completely understand that. But I did a Twitter thread on it last night as well, and kind of outlined my thoughts on it. I said at the start of the show that it is. I don't see another way really that Manchester United elevate the physicality and technical ability and endurance and competitiveness of their team without one or two unpopular sales. And obviously we know like Garnacho's up for sale, this kind of thing, and United might have done a bad job in protecting his price given what Ruben Amorim said to him and how that story got out a week or so ago. But Bruno Fernandes, simply, that I think United can look at selling all these players. But I think you're seeing some things that are coming out in terms of there's Italian clubs like the Inter, for example, want to sign Rasmus Højlund on loan with an option to buy. You have Chelsea still in talks with Jadon Sancho. We don't know what's going to happen there yet. There's no actual outcome there yet. Barcelona don't really have the kind of money to go and sign Marcus Rashford on a permanent deal. So there's not really any guarantees that cold, hard cash is going to come in for these players straight away. And United really need to get on the incomings as soon as they possibly can, especially before pre-season starts, because pre-season is going to be a massive, massive thing for Ruben Amorim to get right. He needs to get these players fitter. He needs to get them to understand what he wants to do tactically. And I think the Bruno Fernandes one will be the deal that moves first. I think all of the others at the moment are weeks down the line, at the very least. So we wait and see. But I think United are going to need that money to give them a bit of a cushion in order to reinvest. And I think, if it would strengthen the negotiating position with other sales. I think that is an important point to stress, even though it is them selling their best player. It's a tough one, but I didn't say that I was going to talk about Bruno Fernandes, but I've been talking about him for the last 5 minutes. Anyway, Matheus Cunha has been announced, right? So I have talked about this a good few times already, but it is a super positive move. And I think what United need to do here in terms of the signings that they make and their transfer policy moving forward. And I will do more of an in-depth episode, maybe something around United's perfect transfer window or the amount of players that United to sell, the perfect signings for United to make over the course of the summer. Maybe they are ideas for a future video. But in terms of what they need to do in a general sense, I spoke just now twice about raising the level of the team physically and technically. Cunha does that. Whatever stats you see about how much he walks, he can carry the ball. He's strong. He can wriggle through tight spaces. He can beat players. He has fantastic technical ability. All of these things are super important. And United don't have many, if any, ball carriers, especially through the middle at the moment. So it's a super important signing to make for him. I think there's a perfect position that you see for him in the left 10. He's played there for Wolves, super effective. It's kind of annoying, quite annoying actually, that Ryan Aït-Nouri looks like he's going to be going to Manchester City now, given the understanding that those two had in the Wolves team. Similar systems, obviously Aït-Nouri, the left wing back. United signed Patrick Dorgu in January, and they were linked with Ryan Aït-Nouri as well at the time, but went with Dorgu instead because he would seem to be a cheaper option. But watch Man City now get him for around 35 million, I would imagine, which is not too much more than what Dorgu was. Just watch that happen. Anyway, it is on Cunha. It is super important that United tick a lot of boxes in terms of immediacy with the signings that they make. And I think Cunha does tick a lot of those boxes. He can carry the ball, physically very strong, really good technically, good at 1v1s, add something in attack, proven in the Premier League, 15 goals last season and a good few assists as well. And he scored from a corner against Man United last season, I think. He first came onto my radar, especially when United played Wolves in the first game of the season before last under Erik ten Hag. And United won the game 1-0. Rafa Varane scored a late header. But that was the first day that we saw the chasm of midfield space that had opened up in Erik ten Hag's tactics. And Cunha was the chief instigator of carrying the ball right through the heart of Manchester United on that day. I thought, oh my God, what are we looking at here? And this guy can really, really carry the ball. So he really stood out to me there. He has had a mixed career so far, had a difficult time at Atletico Madrid, played for RB Leipzig, played for Hertha Berlin and was really effective there, but has really grown into the status that he has now at Wolves over the last few years and is ready for that step up. I think he's got that maverick ability about him. He's got that personality. I think it's really important that he wanted to join Manchester United and Manchester United only, regardless of whether they were in the Champions League or not. Super important that you get characters in there like that. And look, there's been plenty of players like that that have joined United in the past when they weren't in the Champions League, and it hasn't meant that they've gone on to be a success. That's simply the case. But something has to change, and United really need to get that cultural element right. But I was speaking about just now how important it is that United do get this transfer window right, not only in terms of the players that they sign, but in terms of like the profiles that they have. So United, we all look at the 11 at the moment, and I look at the 11 especially, and I think there's so much more that needs to be added to this team in order for Amorim's style of football to actually come out and be successful. It needs ball carriers. It needs players who are good 1v1, this kind of thing. And it needs players who are ready, and Cunha is ready. He's proven in the Premier League. Bryan Mbeumo as well, who's been linked with United over the last week or 2 weeks or whatever, a good few months, actually. But they've really intensified over the last few days. Another really good example, 20 Premier League goals. These two players, for teams who are, not Premier League heavyweights by any means, but they have really stood out in the teams that they're playing for and delivered goals as part of really solid tactical systems that have worked out. United need players like that to raise the immediate level of their team. Like obviously, it's a different thing entirely to play for Manchester United and the pressure that comes with it. But in order to alleviate that pressure, you need to have a plan. You need to have a tactical plan, and Ruben Amorim has got that. You have that plan to fall back on when that pressure around you is so intense. I think what we've seen with United players in the past is that they have tried to play to a certain manager's tactics, but then something's gone wrong and they all go and do whatever they want to do themselves, and then the team plan falls apart. And you kind of erode at what the plan is over the course of a good few games and months when things aren't going well and the manager ends up leaving. Having a tactical plan and having players that can carry it out is super important. And having Premier League ready, Premier League proven players like Cunha is a really good start. Let's see how many United can get in. I think for me, they need, in a good summer, I'm talking 6 or 7. Whether that happens, maybe I'm dreaming. I don't know. Maybe 4 Premier League proven players or something like that. And then you bring in a good few others as well. You bring in youth players or bring in young players from other clubs and bleed them into the team. That might be the way forward, but you need to definitely raise that physical level for sure. You get the Premier League players, but United have to play the long-term game here as well. Cunha's 25, 26 years old, and Mbeumo 24, 25 years old. If you're signing players of that age, it means they're ready now. It means they're good to go. It means that you can probably expect that they'll come into this Manchester United team and pick things up straight away, especially if they have a good pre-season under Ruben Amorim. But there will come a time where United need to step up their levels. And we talked about Franco Mastantuono over the last few weeks. He plays for River Plate, 17 years old. A right 10 that Manchester United have been potentially interested in. He's a 10 or a right winger, plays for River Plate, scored a banging goal against Boca a few weeks ago. And widely regarded as one of the best talents to come out of Argentinian football. There's always one that comes out every year, and he is the next guy. United are nowhere near that conversation at the moment simply because they are not good enough as a football club. And I think from what it seems like, PSG are the ones that are moving for him. Just won the Champions League over the weekend with a group of players that maybe I'll touch on this actually. Maybe it's super important to touch on this. The way that PSG played in that Champions League final the other night, you can talk about the tactics, you can talk about everything. But for me, what stood out in that game was how fit they were, how much ground they covered, how much pressure they put on Inter, how willing they were to run backwards. That is a prerequisite of being a good team nowadays. And that is a very, very young, very fit, very athletic football team, as well as being technically fantastic. That's the prototype of player that is the top of the game in Europe at the moment. And you can have debates about systems, back threes, back fours, and how Enrique's football completely outclassed Inzaghi's, and that was obviously the case. But I think you look at it, PSG's team, so much younger than Inter's. Inter's is a group of wily old veterans who got to the final through hanging in matches, and they came back against Barcelona, and lots of know-how, lots of experience in there. But in the end, they just could not live with the physicality and the technical ability of that PSG team. That is the thing that stood out to me. And I did do a tweet around like systems and this kind of thing just before the game. And obviously the back three ended up getting destroyed. But I think for me, the super important thing is that you have players who are able to cover that ground. Have players who are able to cover that ground, have players who are able to perform to a superbly high technical level, right deep into, 80, 90 minutes. That's the way that football is going. And United's team is so far off that. I don't need to tell you twice that Manchester United is so much worse than the European champions, but that's where United need to get to. And buying Premier League ready players now is super important, but at the same time, Christopher Vivell is going to be super duper important to building that long-term future beyond the signings that are made now. United really need to attack that market of finding players like Aiden Heaven. He's just the example that jumps out to me at the moment because he's physically very strong, quick, able to carry the ball, technically really good. I think he's very, very promising, fits into what system Ruben Amorim wants. I need to make more of those signings. And they have done. But we need to develop them properly. We need to wait a few years in order for them to either start getting into the first team, go out on loan somewhere else, or whatever. But United need to set the foundation now with Premier League proven players, and at the same time, really make sure that they are finding top level talent that they can eventually drift into the first team that can carry on that level and take it further forward. Because United need to be competing for titles. They need to be competing for the Premier League, and they need to be competing for the European Cup. So that signings of young, promising players is super important. As well as, look, it's a lot of pressure to put on in one summer, but that other part of this needs to be a consistent thing. And I think we have seen it since last summer. United really need to go and sweep these really talented, undervalued, but massive potential players and start embedding them into the first team and making sure that they are developing players at the right levels to play first team football moving forward, whether that's to keep them in the first team or to sell them in the end, because United need to make up some ground in sales over the next few years. And look, I'll be back in just a second to talk about the transfer window so far, because there's been some absolutely fantastic news stories over the last few days that, look, if it keeps on like this, it's going to be a long old summer. Be back in a second. Right, welcome back to the pod, everyone. Please subscribe on all the podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. The Promise and the Manchester United podcast. Also, as I said earlier on, if you've not done so already, and if you would like to, I explained a little bit earlier on, around the 6-minute mark, I think, that there is a second YouTube channel that I would appreciate if you could subscribe to, because of some problems I'm having with this one. I've been thinking about doing it for a while, and I can't really put it off anymore, I don't think. I think it's the right thing for me to do, given what I would like to do with the YouTube channel. But that is what it is. So please subscribe. The link should be in the description for that on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube as well. But quick shout out as well to Rich, who I was at a wedding on Friday and seated at a table with Rich, who've been listening to the podcast for a couple of years, and it's crazy small world. Absolute pleasure to meet you the other day, mate. We talked about United for about 2 hours, 4 hours, or whatever it was, and really appreciate the support. So you commented on a recent video as well, so thanks for that. And keep listening, keep watching, and I really, really appreciate the support. And for everybody else as well, if I do happen to bump into you, you see me or something like that, please come up to me and say hello, have a chat or something like that. We were sat at a table for like 2 hours before we even realized we started talking about what we do and that kind of thing. So thanks so much for talking to me the other day and making me feel valued as well. Really, really appreciate that. But let's move on to it's day 2 of the transfer window. And I've always wanted to do this, and maybe I will now, but every single transfer window, every single summer especially, Manchester United get linked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of players. And we're 2 days in to the transfer window. And the amount of stories I've already seen that have come out over the last couple of days, not even thinking like since, the ones that we know, the Gyökereses, the Osmans, these kinds of players. I'm not even talking about these ones. I'm talking about players that have been linked with United over the last 2 days or so. I'm not disputing the interest in these players from Manchester United isn't completely genuine. Because in some cases it may be. A lot of players will be offered to clubs like Manchester United simply because they need routes out of certain clubs. And it's crazy to know how many names get linked with Manchester United. I'm only going to run through a few of them that I found just upon thinking for like 2 minutes. But it's crazy how you put Man United's name in with any kind of player. Wesley Sneijder does former Man United transfer target. Wesley Sneijder did this at the Champions League final pre-game the other day. And, any kind of hook you can bring to Manchester United, it makes it relevant, and it makes your stories relevant to a fan base and relevant to a football club. It is so draining, so draining. But just a few things I wanted to talk about the stories that we've seen over the last couple of days. I did tweet this one, but there was a piece from The Guardian. Ed Aaron's big fan of Ed Aaron's, really good work for The Guardian. But, every summer you kind of, when you work in media, it's easy enough to do like roundups of the players who could leave certain football clubs and where they could end up going in the summer. So you'll write a player down, you'll say who he plays for, you'll say the clubs he could either fit into or the clubs that he has been linked to. And then you give an estimated price, these kinds of things. So there was a piece from Ekitike to Garnacho, transfers to look out for this summer. And Garnacho, a sentence on Garnacho said, the Argentinian forward is expected to cost around 40 million if United allow him to leave, with Napoli, who tried to sign him in January, thought to be the early front runners. Chelsea have also been monitoring the situation. And everybody saw the 40 million thing get picked up by aggregators, and then everybody lost their minds. It might end up being that United end up selling him for 40 million quid. But if they do, let's cross that bridge when we come to it. Because United were getting linked with a sale for Garnacho in January for 50 million quid. And Napoli were willing takers at that price, if I remember rightly. United wanted 60 million. Maybe it was something different. Maybe it was 50 million euros. I can't remember rightly. And it was 44 million or whatever it was. But that was mid-season. It's a lot easier to shift players in transfer windows in the summer. And you see the way that stories come out on timelines and things like that, and the way that people react to things. It's going to be a hell of a long summer if you're taking every single story as gospel, especially when it's from a piece like that is, again, no shade on the person who wrote it or anything like that. But wait for something actually concrete to come out rather than just a roundup piece. He's linked with, he's listed along with them, Burmo, Sesko, Cherky, Nico Williams, Jonathan David, Joe Bellingham, like just players that could leave their clubs in the summer. And you see one line picked out by an aggregator from one story and then you bracket it with Guardian Sport or something like that. And everybody thinks it's legitimate. Everybody thinks, oh my God, the world's ending. United aren't getting enough for this player. United have an entire summer to sell Garnacho. And I spoke earlier on, if they end up getting a hell of a lot of money for Bruno Fernandes, it does, no matter what you think, I know Garnacho isn't wanted, but it does strengthen their position in a sense, because they have that money in the bank already, so maybe they can afford to take a lower fee on a player like that. But also, it strengthens their position for a long time. And if there's a market for Garnacho, if there is, then I've even seen that Jamie Gittins, right? Jamie Gittins, let's see, is the same. Jacob Steinberg from the Guardian today. Chelsea weighing up 50 million bid for Borussia Dortmund's Jamie Gittins. Jamie Gittins, like, you're seriously telling me that Jamie Gittins is more proven than Alejandro Garnacho? It's crazy. But and maybe I'm doing it myself. I'm kind of losing my mind at the different prices of different players. But Garnacho's price should be equivalent or more than that, given he has already done it in the Premier League, and given the success to failure ratio of players signed from the Bundesliga coming into Premier League clubs. I wouldn't take everything as gospel, is all I'm saying. And especially when it comes to some players that United have been linked with. So I'll just run through a few just quick before I finish the podcast today. It is day 2 of the transfer window, and already we have seen, I'm just picking out some stories from over the last few days. Already we've seen some crazy, crazy links with, maybe some of these end up coming to Manchester United over the course of the summer and they intensify. I don't know. But we have Manchester. Oh, obviously, there's a story around Bruno Fernandes at the moment and where he goes. So what do? You look to the club, the manager that you have now used to manage, and you say, let's go pick out the player that he used to manage and link him to Manchester United. Pedro Goncalves. Good player in his own right. But obviously, it is. And again, I'm not throwing shade at anybody that's writing these stories. I'm just saying that this is the state of what the transfer window will be. And like on this pod, I'm trying to keep the thing of never too high, never too low. Don't believe everything you read. There will be links everywhere, absolutely everywhere. Pedro Goncalves, the Bruno Fernandes replacement, because obviously there's links with Sporting Lisbon, and he's managed him before as Ruben Amorim. We have Randall Kolo Muani, an old favorite who is leaving Juventus by the looks of it and leaving PSG as well. Where will he end up? United will link with him in January. Maybe they end up getting him. I don't know. We have James McAtee from Manchester City, who has been left out of the Club World Cup squad, I think, according to reports, but also England have an under-21 tournament that they're playing in, and he would be a part of that squad. So again, this is something that's just made, it's just hammed up a little bit more than it should be for me. And Manchester United are looking at this player after he's been shockingly left out of the Club World Cup squad. When did Man United last sign a player for Manchester City? I don't know. Decent player, to be fair, but I don't think, for me, like if he ends up signing for Man United, I'll fall on my sword. But you just look at it and you think, come on, guys. Gonzalo Ramos, another player who has, like, I think this one actually has some legs in the sense of he has just won the Champions League with PSG, obviously, but he's been a bench option. United are looking for a forward. Not that I would, really make this guy my first choice or whatever, but I did speak about strikers the other day, and I did forget to put him on the list, but I think he will be available at some point. PSG spent a lot of money on him either last summer or the season before, and I think it was last summer. And obviously, I think he scored 18 goals for PSG this season. Could potentially be an answer up front, but I think as we've established firmly, I think United need more experience in that position. And I think it's a hell of a risk unless you're signing a player like this on loan with an option to buy, like other clubs want to do to Man United's players. We'll see. But he's going to be looking for a new club over the course of the summer. I'd imagine he'll get a move somewhere, whether it'll be United, I'm not sure yet. Marc-Andre ter Stegen has been linked as well. Maybe. I mean, maybe if Barcelona want to get rid of him, they're looking at Joan Garcia, who United should probably be looking at. I'm not sure, but he's been linked with United over the last couple of days, and I don't want to really take up podcast minutes talking about players that and tenuous transfer links Don't really want to fall into that trap, but that's what I'm doing at the moment. Look, you certainly be an upgrade on Onana. That's all I'm going to say. And then the one I wanted to get to last, I talked about experienced strikers who can put themselves around. Alexander Mitrovic. How do you fancy that? It's come from decent sources, to be fair. But Al Hilal, he plays for them currently. Mitrovic wanted by the likes of West Ham and apparently Manchester United, who are looking out for a striker, obviously. He's played for Newcastle before, played for Fulham before. Will he rock up at Manchester United for the same 40 million fee at 30 years old that United, some media are quoting that United want for Garnacho? Look, it's going to be a long summer. It really is. It's going to be a hell of a long summer if you're going to look at every story and then take it. The only reason why I've done this section is to just demonstrate. I'll keep track of this as well. Maybe I'll look at it each day and I'll give a roundup on each of the players that United have been linked with, because it certainly helped with YouTube anyway. But look, we will see. We'll see what happens. Just seen João Felix has been linked with Benfica as well. And look, there's going to be so much nonsense, so much transfer nonsense coming out over the course of the summer. And I don't mean to put, again, all those stories in the nonsense bucket, but certainly some of them are. I'm just prepared. I think the general point I'm trying to make here is don't believe everything you read, and always keep in mind that Man United's name are used in order to amplify stories. Some agents will do it as well. To drum up interest in their player. If a team thinks Manchester United want their player, maybe it'll bring them to the table. That's kind of how it works. And it will go on and on. It's the 2nd of June as I record this. And we have until the end of August. Plus 3 months, minus the 6 days in the middle of June, when I'm sure transfer speculation will be going off anyway. It is going to be a long summer, so just take everything with a pinch of salt, is my point. And let's hope that United actually do end up being quite busy over the course of the summer in terms of incomings and outgoings as well. I'll be back with another podcast probably tomorrow at some point to talk about whatever the news is at that point. Maybe we'll have a development on Bruno Fernandes or something like that. I'm not entirely sure yet, but we're getting to that time where something will happen and we'll know something. Although Bruno is playing, he's on international duty with Portugal, and I do believe that he's going to play. The first game will be on Wednesday in the Nations League playoffs against Germany. So maybe we get an answer after it, maybe towards the end of the week. I'm not entirely sure, but the deadline is Friday. And Al Hilal are trying to make some noise with signing potentially Simone Inzaghi as well after the Champions League final as their new manager. But anyway, look, I've been rambling on for a bit. And we'll see what happens. I'll be back with another podcast shortly, talking about whatever the story is for Manchester United. And please make sure that you do subscribe to the podcast if you like what you see and hear. The Promised Land of Manchester United podcast on Apple and Spotify, 5-star reviews if you would do so, and leave your comments as well. Also, subscribe on YouTube, this channel. Would really appreciate if you still subscribe to this channel. But if everything goes to plan and goes well and enough people move over to this other channel, the link is in the description for that. Just click that link and hit subscribe. I would really, really appreciate that. And if there's enough people over there, maybe I'll start making content on that channel. I'm even thinking of potentially putting clips from this podcast onto that channel in the medium term or in the short term to try and grow that one. But I did explain, and I'll maybe recap it just before I leave. Just so many problems because this YouTube channel was set up with an email address that's now defunct, and I'm not able to use streaming clients in order to stream through them directly into this YouTube channel that you're currently watching on. So it's a bit of a pain. I've not been able to find a way around it. If anybody knows how to do it, then fantastic. I would really appreciate your support with that, and let me know. Drop me a DM or something like that. But I think all avenues are exhausted, and I think this is the only option. But thanks so much, everyone, for watching or for listening. We'll see what Manchester United end up doing, but look, there's going to be a hell of a lot of nonsense. So just try not to lose your mind and just wait for things to be done. I'm sure Manchester United themselves know that they've got a hell of a lot of work to do. Anyway, back soon. Thanks, everyone. This is Problem Sam Podcast. See you soon.